The Holloway House has tasted Clara's fear, and it won't let go. Every shadow hides a secret. Every whisper carries a warning. She thought she could resist it, fight against it. But the deeper she goes, the more the house unravels her reality. Now the past bleeds into the present, and the line between truth and nightmare fades. The key in her hand, the mark on Eleanor's wrist, the echoes of those who came before. Everything is connected, and the house is waiting. But Clara is done running. She needs answers, even if it means facing the darkness head-on. As Clara performed the ritual, the shadows in the attic began to shift. They twisted and stretched, forming human-like shapes that reached out for her. The whispers turned into screams, and the air grew colder. Clara dropped the journal and backed away, but the shadows followed. The house was alive, and it wanted her. She had to escape before it was too late. Clara ran to the attic window, her heart pounding. The glass was cracked, but she could see the outside world. The trees, the sky, freedom. She grabbed a nearby chair and smashed the window, the glass shattering into 1,000 pieces. The house screamed in protest, but Clara didn't hesitate. She climbed out onto the roof, the cold night air biting at her skin. Clara stood on the roof, the house groaning and shifting beneath her. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. "You can't leave," they said. Clara looked down and saw the ground far below. She had no choice. She jumped, landing hard on the overgrown grass below. The house loomed above her, its windows dark and foreboding. But Clara was free. For now, Clara returned to the motel, shaken but alive. She tried to forget what she had seen, but the whispers followed her. In the quiet hours, she would hear them, faint but unmistakable. The house hadn't let her go. It was still with her, and it was growing stronger. Determined to understand, Clara began researching the house's history. She discovered that it had been built on an ancient burial ground, its foundations soaked in blood. Dr. Holloway had chosen the location for his experiments, believing the land's dark energy would amplify his work. But the house had a will of its own, and it was hungry. As Clara dug deeper into Holloway House's history, a name surfaced again and again: Eleanor Hawthorne. But the more Clara searched, the stranger Eleanor's story became. She found an old newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. The photo showed a younger Eleanor standing in front of Holloway House, her expression unreadable. The article detailed her investigation into a series of disappearances tied to the property. But then, the report stopped. No follow-ups, no resolution. It was as if Eleanor had vanished, yet she hadn't. Clara uncovered a more recent sighting. Witnesses described Eleanor as distant, almost detached from reality. She spoke in cryptic phrases, as if her mind existed in two places at once. But what truly unsettled Clara was a detail buried in an old police report. Eleanor had been found wandering near the house, dazed and disoriented, with a strange mark on her wrist. The report described it as a faintly glowing symbol, pulsing like something alive. When questioned, Eleanor refused to explain. She only whispered, "The house chooses who it keeps." A chill ran down Clara's spine. Had Eleanor been marked by the house? Was she trapped even now? A rustling sound snapped Clara's attention to the motel window. A shadow shifted just beyond the glass. Someone was there. Heart pounding, she moved cautiously, pulling back the curtain. Eleanor stood outside, waiting, watching. It was time for answers. Clara confronted Eleanor about the mark, and the woman's calm demeanor shattered. "You don't understand," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. "The house marks those it chooses. It's a curse, a bond. I tried to escape, but it always pulls me back." Clara realized that Eleanor wasn't just a researcher. She was a victim, just like her. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Help her," they said. "Save her." But Clara wasn't sure if she could trust Eleanor. Was she a victim, or was she something else entirely? Clara studied Eleanor's mark, its faint glow pulsating in the dim light of the motel room. "How long have you had this?" Clara asked, her voice steady but her mind racing. Eleanor hesitated, her eyes darting to the door. "Since the first time I entered the house," she admitted. "It's how it controls us. The mark binds us to it, and it grows stronger the more we resist." Clara's heart sank as she realized the implications. If Eleanor was marked, could Clara trust her, or was she already under the house's control? The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Don't trust her," they said. "She's lying." Clara took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for the door. She needed answers, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor was hiding something. Eleanor suddenly stood, her movements stiff and unnatural. "You don't understand," she said, her voice distant, as if speaking from far away. "The house isn't just a prison, it's a gateway, and it's almost ready." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "A gateway to what?" she demanded. Eleanor's eyes glazed over, and her voice became a whisper. "To something older, something that doesn't belong here." Before Clara could respond, Eleanor turned and walked toward the door. "Wait," Clara called, but Eleanor didn't stop. She opened the door and stepped into the night, her figure dissolving into the shadows. Clara rushed after her, but when she reached the doorway, Eleanor was gone. The only trace of her was a faint, glowing mark on the ground, slowly fading into nothing. Clara stared into the darkness, her mind racing. The house wasn't just alive, it was something far worse, and it was coming for her. The night had swallowed Eleanor whole, leaving only questions in her wake. The mark on the ground, fading, pulsing with an unnatural energy, was the only proof she had ever been there at all. Clara stood frozen, her breath shallow, her mind racing. The house wasn't just a haunted relic of the past. It was something far worse, something alive, something waiting. A cold wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a familiar voice. Soft, distant, but unmistakable. "Clara, you can't run." The whispers weren't just in the house anymore. They had followed her. They were inside her mind. As the motel lights flickered and the shadows stretched, Clara realized the truth. She hadn't escaped Holloway House. It had escaped with her. A sudden knock at the door made Clara's heart stop. Slow, deliberate, as if whoever, or whatever, was on the other side already knew she would answer. The light above her flickered once, then went out. The darkness closed in, swallowing Clara and Eleanor in its suffocating grip. Time fractured, reality bent. For a moment, just a moment, Clara felt herself slipping, as if she too was being erased. Then, a voice, faint, distant, calling her back. A sudden burst of light shattered the void. A breath, a heartbeat. The world lurched, and everything went still. But as the silence settled, one truth remained. This wasn't over. Not yet. The house never let go, and neither did the things that lurked within it. Next time, the vanishing point reveals its final secret. But will Clara be ready for what waits beyond the door?